The rules of war are woven in the womb. The victors shall burn bright, while the losers must turn to ash. When the god of war shares this secret with the traveler, it is because she has her reasons.
Well, pack your bags, because we are going to Natlan. Neuvillette did reveal some interesting details about Natlan and what's going on there, as well as the captain being the main harbinger of that region, which I've been speculating for a long time. And it's funny how you get descriptions on items and things that don't really mean anything at the time when this game came out, but as you go, it starts to make more sense. Like the Ascension gemstone for Pyro that actually sort of teases this conflict, but at the time it didn't really make sense. And it reads, a pilgrimage for a wish, a battle to earn a name, burnt to cinders for a dream, if the intention yet remains, achieve truth he has. Now this kind of makes me think of the captain trying to earn the Gnosis from the Pyro Archon, and with what Neuvillette just said about the captain throwing his hat in the ring in Natlan, this makes more sense now. He talked about how the dragons there are different than him because he's from an ancient dragon race, the Sovereigns, where the dragons there have evolved a lot and coexist with humanity. And we've seen in Genshin, dragons have human forms, Vishups, all of them seem to have human forms in a lot of different race of dragons. So they probably coexist with humans in a lot of scenarios, and that war ravishes the land, which isn't surprising, it is the nation of war, but we didn't really get much information on the Pyro Archon, or much else besides all that. So in this video, let's break it down. Let's go over where Natlan is geographically, what to expect there, what it's based off of, and potentially some story arcs that we might see. First off, where will Natlan be? Well, a lot of reliable sources say that it will be next to the Sumeru Desert, so Fontaine was kind of above it, it'll be to the left, which actually makes sense because you have a desert, so why wouldn't the hottest region in Genshin be right beside that? Kind of makes sense, obviously take this with a grain of salt, but a lot of sources say this, and it can be assumed that there'll be a heat mechanic similar to how Dragonspine has a freeze mechanic, and there are said to be a lot of active volcanoes there. And in contrast, while researching this video, it's sort of funny to me how Natlan seems to be the polar opposite of Fontaine. You know, Fontaine's people are more elegant and classy, it's an industrial nation with a lot of advancements in technology, where Natlan seems to be very primitive. You know, people use their fists, not their words. And people form into factions or tribes, sort of live off the land, and it's sort of survival of the fittest. Natlan is said to be based off of West Africa and South America. And we actually have some intel to go off of what these tribes will be like, because we actually know somebody that was from Natlan. Vanessa. You might have heard of Vanessa, but if you didn't read the manga, you might not have seen or know a lot about her. But even if you've just played the game, you probably know that Vanessa was the original Grandmaster of the Knights of Favonius. She's the one that founded the Knights of Favonius. Now who's Vanessa real quick? Well, she was a Muratan, a breed of human or tribe that was from Natlan. Vanessa's tribe was originally from Natlan, and they migrated to Mondstadt, so Vanessa never lived in Natlan, but her family was 2 generations in Mondstadt, which is why they have the tan skin, and they are much stronger than the average people. But Vanessa's tribe was very, like I said, primitive. They lived off the land, and most of the skills they taught were survival techniques in fighting and combat. And Eula's ancestors enslaved Vanessa, because Mondstadt was ruled by the tyrannical nobles. Vanessa was a gladiator that was undefeated, and even Venti bumped into her once and said that she was ironclad, solid as stone. And that really describes people from Natlan. But essentially, long story short, even though she was an undefeated gladiator fighting for the nobles for their entertainment, she started to inspire too many people, so they pitted her against a dragon, Ursa the Drake, which was supposed to be a lose-lose for her, and they basically pointed arrows at her and said, you fight or we kill you. And she did, and she won. And this would start a rebellion that would overthrow Mondstadt's aristocracy and free them. She would then found the Knights of Favonius to prevent this from ever happening again, and would go on to become the Falcon of the West. She would ascend to godhood. Now, why this is important is because I believe Natlan will be made up of a lot of these different tribes. A branch of Vanessa's family's tribe will probably be one of them, but these tribes will most likely be at war with one another and different factions. This will be second nature to them. To all the other nations, it's going to seem weird, but the tribe that Vanessa was from was very battle-hardened. And I believe everyone from Natlan will, because it's a way of life there. It's the nation of war. They're probably always in conflict with one another. Like I said, more primitive. When they have a conflict, they fight it out. Unlike Fontaine, where they actually have a court system and a legal whole system and prison, the Fortress of Mirapede, none of that. These tribes are just going to be warring it out in a constant state of conflict. And we even get teased one character from the trailer, Ianson, and she's probably from one of these tribes. She looks and fits the theme of Natlan and what we're talking about, so it makes sense. And she'll probably play a really major role in the main story because all of these characters do in their Archon quests for each region. Now let's talk about the Pyro Archon, the god of war, Murata. Now, we weren't told anything about her after Fontaine, but we know enough. Now, like I said, she is from the same class or tribe as Vanessa. Vanessa rose to godhood to become the Falcon of the West, while Murata obviously rose to godhood to become the Pyro Archon. So if she was able to rise to godhood as well, and Vanessa was extremely renowned warrior, that Murata, being the god of war and rising to godhood from her sheer skills, well, it's safe to say that she rivals Vanessa and is probably even greater. She's 1,000 years old. So even though she's not the original Pyro Archon, which we don't really know much about, we'll probably learn that when we get there, she survived the Cataclysm 500 years ago. Her and the Raiden Shogun, it's hard to say who exactly is the strongest in combat. As of now, it's been the Raiden Shogun and possibly Morax, a young in his prime Morax, but the God of War is probably no slouch, and I'm sure she was cracking skulls during the Cataclysm because, well, she's still around and kicking and probably still fighting it out. That is until she probably has to have her duel with the captain, which we're going to talk about in a sec. We also don't know what she looks like, but I'm going to assume that she's going to look similar to Vanessa, being that she's going to be tanned, bright red hair, just a warrior woman. And yes, we know she's a woman because we already know that Venti and Zhongli are the only two male Archons, and Venti and Zhongli are the only original Archons, which means every other Archon is not the original. That is why we know Murata is not the original, but she's been around at least 1,000 years. And I've been speculating this for a long time, but I truly believe that she's going to have to fight the captain. And the captain is going to have to prove himself in war to get the Gnosis. Neuvillette already kind of told us this, that he threw his hat in the ring in Natlan, but I believe that he's going to have to duel her in order to take the Gnosis. Either that or defeat somebody extraordinarily powerful. And the captain being the first Fatui Harbinger, he's going to be no joke. And because the Fatui Harbingers always get the Gnosis in the end, if this is true, that means he's actually going to defeat the Pyro Archon potentially. That's huge. We're going to get to possibly see the strongest Fatui Harbinger, and the captain's so well known for his combat skills, it's insane. He can defeat gods. We're going to get to see him possibly take on one of the strongest Archons in combat, possibly in a 1v1. That alone makes it worth it. I hope that Hoyoverse doesn't disappoint with this. They have the potential to make something great here. And the original story trailer also describes it as the incandescent of resurrection. So Natlan is said to have some kind of witchcraftery too in resurrection. I guess the story is going to revolve around this in some form. And a lot of people were speculating now for a long time that this would be Signora. We would possibly get her revived or resurrected, and that maybe the Fatui need Natlan for this. But now that we know the Gnosis come from the third Descender's remains, actually I believe that Natlan plays a key part in also maybe possibly resurrecting this third Descender with all the pieces. Like, Natlan would be the last piece that they need, if you think about it, because the Cryo Archon would already have her Gnosis intact. So Natlan is the last Gnosis they need to go gather. And then possibly, maybe in Natlan we see the third Descender resurrected. It makes sense. Why else would they be collecting them? And actually, Natlan being such an important piece, reviving this third Descender or possibly resurrecting somebody of importance, why wouldn't the Fatui send their strongest member, the captain, on this mission? This is going to be a big one, so they're going to need to send their biggest gun to do it. Makes perfect sense if you ask me. Overall, there's not really much else we know. We know a decent amount about the tribe system, and we know characters like Vanessa, so we can speculate a little bit off of that. The God of War, we don't really know what she looks like or what she's capable of exactly, but we can assume that she's probably pretty powerful, no joke, being the God of War. Overall, I'm pretty excited for Natlan because I think the story's really going to kick in a high gear. It seems like it. All arrows point towards that. You got the Captain, and you got the Pyro Archon in one place. It's sure to be good, right? What do you think's going to happen in Natlan? What do you think we'll see? Lots of dragons roaming around? Lots of strong enemies? Are we going to have heat mechanic almost everywhere? Lots of big rocky mountains and volcanoes? Is the land going to be pretty barren? It's hard to say, but I'm really excited to find out. Thank you for watching though. Please feel free to sucker punch that like button and subscribe. Help me get in the algorithm. I do appreciate you watching this far. And as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.